Hello, my name is Hannah Ross. I'm a rising junior at Bennett College. Today we're here to talk about a very important part of Greensboro history. Beside me, I have three special individuals. Do you care to introduce yourselves?
I'm Deborah Compton-Holt.
Robyn Estes.
And I'm Nelson Johnson.
So, Miss Estes, do you mind sharing what happened in the beginning?
It was kind of funny how the whole thing got started. We had 3 shifts at Kmart, first, second, third shift. And it was kind of like each shift was independent of the other shift. And things were happening on all 3 shifts that people didn't like. And the way we came together was that some first shift people had dispute with some managers on first shift. And they felt like when they went to the office that they didn't get any resolution to it. So they were looking to go somewhere where they felt they could get some resolution. And at the same time, the same things were happening on second and third shift. I was on third shift at the time, and when it all got started on third shift, we had 2 employees that at the time a group leader had gave them instructions to do something. And the employees had done it wrong. So the next night that we came in, and the whole group of third shift people in repack was standing there waiting for them to hand out the assignments, the group leader, now on third shift we didn't have a lot of management people. Group leaders mainly ran the third shift. And when all the people were standing around, maybe about 35 people, waiting for them to hand out assignments, the group leader came out. Instead of calling these 2 people to the side and saying, didn't I tell you to do this way, and you did it your way, and I got called out on the carpet for it, so I want y'all to go back and do it the right way now. Instead of him saying something like that, he came out and he was very angry, and he started, kind of trashing them in front of everybody. Now, at that time, one of the girls began to cry. And so before I had came to Kmart, I'd been a manager in fast food. And when the girl started to cry, I said to the girl, don't stand here and cry. And I said to the group leader, I said, do you realize what you just done? You've broken the law. And so he said, well, don't tell me my job. I said, somebody needs to tell you your job. And I said, I've been a manager for over 20 years, and I know this is against the law. And I told the other girl, I said, and he said, well, if y'all don't like it, y'all can leave. So I told the 2 girls, I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to leave, and in the morning you're going to call me, and we're going to go to the EEOC, and we're going to file a labor suit against Kmart for what he just said. And we got all these people standing around here as your witness, and that's what we're going to do. So me and the group leader had a few more words. So he called, we had the one manager on third shift. So he came over, and I had a few words with him, and I said, it doesn't make me any difference. I said, I can leave right now, but I guarantee you, even if they don't go with me, I'm gonna go down there and file a suit against you. So then the group leader apologized for what he had done. And so the manager said, let's everybody just forget it, and let's go to work. And that's what we did. We all went to work. So during the night, everybody was kind of talking to each other about it. And another third shift employee had come up to me and said, are you going to go to the labor board in the morning? And I said, yeah, I'll go down there. You want to come with me? And he said, well, I talked to a guy from first shift, and they had some problems on first shift. And first shift wants to try to form a union in here. So if I give you somebody's number, will you call them? I said, sure. So he gave me the number of a first shift employee. Turned out to be Larry Lawson, who worked on first shift. And the next day I called him, and we talked a little bit. And he said, we're going to have a union meeting. And we're trying to get everybody together to meet with this union. And they're going to tell us what we can do and how to proceed with what we're doing. So he said, when we get this set up, I'm going to call you back. And I said, okay. And maybe about later that day, I got a call from like 2 or 3 other people One person was on second shift, and it was two people from first shift who said that they had heard that I had a dispute with the management. And so we met that Sunday. We got maybe about 15 people together, and all 15 people were from the 3 different shifts, to start talking about forming a union. And some of the union business agents were there, and the union was Act 2 at the time. This was the union that represented the cone mill workers. And the reason they went to them, they said they had talked to the Teamsters, and they didn't like what the Teamsters were saying, how to go about forming the union. So one of the guys that worked at Kmart, his wife worked at cone mills. She suggested that they go to Act 2 because they're the union that represented her. So I think we all know how hard it was for them to get into cone mills. And so they called the Act 2 people. We all had a meeting with them, and they talked to us about signing union cards, getting union cards signed, and about how dedicated we were to getting this union formed, because they told us it's not going to be easy, it's going to be hard. Said just like cone mill, it took us years and years to get the union in there. It could be the same at Kmart. So I think everybody at that time, all the people present, sort of said, let's do it. And so I talked with one of the union reps, pulled me aside after that and said, what made you have the argument with the manager on third shift? And I said, because what they did was wrong. And I let them know it was wrong. And I said, you just can't stand up and let them walk over people that way, because if they did it to the 2 of them, they could do it to anybody that was on that shift. And this is kind of how the whole ball got rolling. We started talking to other people about forming the union, to kind of see how many people will be behind forming a union. And I think the strongest shift we had was third shift, because I think a lot of the people on third shift was they were older people who had worked on jobs before, who felt they had been abused on jobs before. And then the fact that I stood up to a manager on third shift, that was the strongest shift we had. When we started getting union cards signed, third shift had like 98% of the people on the shift had signed union cards. And then after that, when I think second shift realized how strong third shift was, and they kind of got it in their heads, well, we can be just as strong. So the union cards start coming in. We had, and it was an uphill battle, because when we started passing out information about the union, you couldn't do it during your shift, but you could do it like before your shift, after your shift. We would come in early, pass out leaflets about the union. Some of the managers tried to stop us, tried to tell us that they were going to fire us, that we couldn't pass out the leaflets, and we just have to tell them, as long as we're doing it and we're not at work, there's nothing they could do about it. And we used to come in, like the third shift people, I had a couple of people that would come in with me early, and we would pass them out to the second shift people as they were leaving, and the third shift people as they were coming in. And second shift was doing the same thing on first shift. As first shift was leaving, second shift was coming in, we were passing out union information about union meetings and signing union cards and different things like that. And at that time, we had some real dirty management at Kmart. And Bob Kofeld, who was the assistant manager of the plant, he made it his business to be on third shift, to sort of fight the third shift people, because he thought the whole thing was started on third shift. And so we had sort of a hard time with him. We had to stand up to him and just let him know, well, you can fire us, we don't care. The union's still coming in here. And Kmart has said, you'll never get a union in this plant.
And one thing that also brought Kmart to Greensboro was the Senator Jesse Helms. He led them to believe they could build a plant in a low-income black area in Greensboro. You wouldn't have to worry about paying, you could pay low wages, and you didn't have to worry about unions. And so that's what they got the idea from, to come to Greensboro. under that mindset, and that's why their management people treated us like that. They had, Kmart was known to have a revolving door. They might hire a new shift of people. They're going to have another shift going out. That's how fast they were firing people, just like that, and hiring.
What, for those who don't know, is a union?
A union is a sort of like a co-op that when you form with all the employees in a workspace, that you set down certain rules. Your rules can be everyone has to be paid a certain amount. When people are terminated, they have the right to file a grievance against their termination. A company can't set outrageous standards like production standards that they know people are not going to be able to meet. So you come up with an agreement between the employees and the company and the union that's representing the employees, that the employees are going to be employed there in a fair way. And this is what a union does. And this was mainly the main focus of the union at Kmart was the treatment of the employees, because the main grievance on all three shifts was the treatment. A lot of the management that they brought into Kmart when they opened up the distribution center came from other distribution centers. Ocala, Florida, Colorado, Texas. So most of the initial management people came from other distribution centers that Kmart already had operating. And I suppose they operated those distribution centers the way they came here and thought they could treat us here in North Carolina. But they didn't realize that a lot of the people in there, just like I said on third shift, I was in my mid-30s when I went there. I had worked as a fast food manager for a lot of years. And one thing that I learned in fast food, they're very good at training their management people, because the one thing they do not want to do is be sued by anybody for something that a manager says or something that a manager does to an employee. So they send you to training, so you will know what you can say and what you cannot say, when you can terminate an employee and when you cannot terminate an employee. So when I had really got kind of tired of being in that whole fast food thing, and I was looking for something else. And a friend of mine had told me that, oh, they built a new distribution center out Wendover Avenue. You should come out there and apply for a job because they're hiring people. So I did. And when the first thing I did when I went there, and when they first told me what they were paying, I said to the personnel director, I'm sorry, I can't work for that. And so I just said, I appreciate you taking the time with me, and I left. Maybe about 2 weeks later, they called me back, and they offered me a little higher salary. And so I took the job, and she did tell me, she said that here at Kmart, we promote from within. And she said most of the management people here are from other distribution centers, which meant they probably wouldn't stay for a long time. After they got this distribution up and running, some of them were probably going to leave and go back home. And she said, if you take the job and you start training, since we promote from within, since you have management experience, chances are you will be promoted. So that's why I took the job. But then after working there for a while and seeing some of the stuff that was going on, I thought in my head, these people are crazy. And, so that's why I was telling the people, hey, don't take this stuff. If they think they can run it with no employees, let them. You know, and some of the people were afraid when we start talking about a union, because of course the company starts talking about firing people. You know, if you join the union, we're going to fire you. If we see you, and they try to get people by, if you're standing around talking, if you're talking to somebody and you're not working, they try to get you that way. You weren't doing your job, and any little thing that they could get you on. And so you just have to tell the people, stand strong, because we all gonna stand together. And I kind of told the people in repack the way it's gonna be if they fire somebody, if somebody in repack walks out of here, all the repack is walking out of here. We're not going to let them get us that way, take us off one at a time. So if one person goes out, everybody goes out. And so the people were pretty much, joined to that we were going to kind of protect each other until we got the union in there. So it kind of worked out good for us in that light because the company saw that we weren't going to back down. And then when we got all the union cards signed, the union petitioned the court for a vote. It took us a lot of a lot of battles to get to that point. We had to walk out. We had a walkout. Then we had the protest where Reverend Johnson can talk a little bit about this, where how we got the poor reform ministers involved in it. We started going to the community, getting a lot of community groups, and poor reform ministers came in. We went to sit down, have a meeting with them, and talk to them about what was going on at Kmart. And I guess we were really lucky that we were able to get the poor reform ministers on our side, because that's really when this whole thing kind of jumped off in Greensboro.
And one thing too that we realized is that Kmart had a lot of discriminatory practices, and it was based on race, and that helped to unite a large number of African Americans. There were some that were afraid, because unions weren't real strong here.
Right.
So, but once you got them to come into the meetings, and they would hear what the union was saying, then they would hear what Kmart was saying, and it gave us a chance to make a wise decision. I had one manager, she made my life pure hell. She really did. And I'll tell you, if it hadn't been for my faith, she probably would have broken me.
Yeah.
We used to do walkouts before we voted the union in. And when you did a walk, we could do that because we hadn't had the vote. And we would walk out, go to the break room. We'd hold a rally in the break room. And we would also have one of the maintenance people would be at the front gate. So whenever they called the police, he would radio us back, and then we'd all go back to work. But it was really hard, and especially when you saw co-workers being fired for nothing, and they had a thing called bank of hours. If you got down to 0.0 bank of hours, you still had your job, but if you went 1 point over, you were terminated, automatic termination, and they only gave you a few hours, and that was one of their hard things, not only with the salary. Then we were working 6 and 7 days a week, 10 and 12 hours a day. So you really weren't having any family time, and then really not even making that much for all those hours. So we got, it just seemed like we weren't getting anywhere. So I made the suggestion we need to go to the Pulpit Farm because we are people in their communities. And so we went to the Pulpit Farm and we told them about our plight. And thanks to Reverend Johnson and
Reverend
Herbert Nelson. Reverend Wright, Reverend, let's see, Herb Nelson. Okay. They were basically a key. And Nelson was really the militant, But anyway, so we went to them and told them what was going on. So they contacted Kmart. And I'll let you take it from there.
Okay. If I might, I'd want to do a little contexting. At the time, Kmart was the largest retail distribution store in the United States. It was a $36 billion company in 1990s money. It hired over 200,000 workers. and it came to Greensboro and built a huge distribution center, 37 acres. One way to think about it is that put together 36 football fields.
Wow.
That's about how big it was. And they supplied hard goods like televisions and sofas and all these kind of things that you would buy at the store to 5 states around here. So this city invested a lot of money to bring them here. They had to put in roads, they had to put in water,
Right.
they had to grant them all of this. So it isn't like the citizens of Greensboro didn't have a vested interest in it. It was our money
That's right.
that was invested in them.
Right.
And what they were doing was sucking money out of Greensboro, not paying workers enough. And I heard about this from a friend of mine, Joe Alvarez, who actually worked for the union.
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and when y'all came to share, you told us that you had been to the Better Business Bureau, Chamber of Commerce, wherever you've been, and all these people turned you down. And when you came to us, when y'all left, the question was, if these are people in our community, they are our brothers and our sisters, and they are being mistreated, don't we have to receive that as we are being mistreated? You know? Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. That's what we are taught in our faith. We worked hard to convince some people to get in this. One of the largest ministers in the area, largest churches in the area, said this was about education. I wouldn't have any problem with it. But these unions, the leaders are in New York and all of this, and we said, wait. All the workers are in Greensboro. And so why are you talking about people in New York? They're the ones who are suffering. So we got involved, and I think the workers had decided to go, at the time it was called the GGO, the Greater Greensboro Open. It was a golf tournament. It actually was, in Greensboro at the time, bigger than the ACC tournament. So everybody would go out to Sedgefield, springtime, the grass is green, everybody's drinking hooch of some kind. And it was like a big party. The golf players were out there playing, and all the ladies were dressed in their fineries and walking around, thousands of people. And these folk had the nerve to go out and sit in on the 18th hole of the golf course. That actually projected it way beyond the people at the plant. All of a sudden, it became an incident in Greensboro. Who are these people? Well, they had asked us to go with them, but we hemmed and hawed and said, you know, maybe we'll support you, but we're not going to sit in on the golf course. That's not what preachers do. But actually, when they called us, that we're in jail. So we then decided that we had to get more involved in this, and they had to bring our community into it. And so what we were told is that once you got a union, the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, required the union to meet with the workers, and they did for a little while, you know, once a month, and then they wouldn't meet again until a month later. Well, that wears people out. It's called not negotiating in good faith. So we got in it, and we started to meet with other people. We called the mayor and said, you know, this is our city. Y'all done spend all this money to bring these people in here to treat us bad. So she actually joined with us, Mayor Carolyn Allen. Yeah. So then we went to the Chamber of Commerce. Y'all had already gone to them. and say, these are our people, you know. So you are running the economy of the city. What are you going to do? So they said, we don't get involved in disputes like this. We said, you are involved in it. The company is here, and y'all are running around making economic policy. So John Lawrenson, the chair of the Chamber of Commerce, we said, you need to sit down and let's have a serious discussion. So we brought together the mayor, the Chamber of Commerce chairman, the Pulpit Forum, the Beloved Community Center, all in the poor folks' house where homeless people were. And, homeless people were waking up, sleeping on the floor, and said, who is this? This is the mayor. Who is this? The chamber? I said, what they doing here? I said, we're getting ready to do business. Y'all gonna help us, you know? But all of this meant that we believe, and still believe, that no persons in a city should be mistreated by billion-dollar companies and just run over people. There were sexual improprieties, touching people inappropriately. There were so many shoulder injuries. One guy came in and pulled off his shirt, and shoulder was hurt because there was a lot of lifting. So when you explain it like that and put a little bit of gospel in it, it actually does resonate with people, because there's something in people that want to do the right thing. There's also something in people that don't want to do it. There's a tug of war. So we have to sow to that part of people, and that's what we were doing, whether it was with the mayor. And then one night, and this was a break point, neither one of y'all were there, but we met with the union leadership, and they had governor and a few other people there, and they were going to have a big sit-in at Kmart, the big Kmart store. What do they call it?
Bedford Parkway.
Yeah, Super Kmart. Super Kmart. And I've been around Greensboro for a while, and I knew how the police would treat this. So we argued against it. And Herb Nelson, Maisie Ferguson, and myself, until late at night. And finally, they put it to a vote. And the workers, representing all the workers, said, we're going to stand with the preachers on this. That was a funny way to put it. But when we left, I tell you, it was a strange feeling that I had. I felt like we had won the argument, but there was something missing. And it was that what they were talking about doing, which is sitting down in front of the door of the Kmart or even sitting in the aisle, was not wrong. We just didn't believe that they were spiritually grounded enough not to get provoked. What you sitting here for? You know, who's your mama? You know, and just say something to get you to, after a while, say, don't talk to me like that. And then you knock over something and everybody jump up and the whole thing, and half the people get arrested and go back to jail again. You know, so that's what I was thinking. I've been through that. I know how it's done. So we met over here at Burger King, me and her, and said, if you don't think they are spiritually ready, who is spiritually ready? At that point, we had to look in the mirror. Because we can't talk to somebody about not being spiritually ready, and you ain't spiritually ready. So we decided we were going to demonstrate how to do this. So we had a big meeting of the Pulpit Forum. 35, 36 people came, and we went around in circles. And actually, and I want to explain this because sometimes you don't have to win the argument in terms of majority vote. We said this is a moral question. Nobody should be forced to do something that they morally don't agree with. But people should not be voted not to do things that they morally think they should do, you know? So we reached an agreement. Those who are willing to replace the workers and sit in yourself, a little bit following Jesus, you know, and you do it. And those who are not willing to do it, you don't do it. And our agreement was those who do, don't criticize those who don't, and those who don't criticize us who do. That's what we ended up with. Out of 35, 9 preachers agreed to go down there. And we sat in front of the Kmart store, and there's a picture. This book was written up by Rockefeller called Louder Than Words, with a group of pastors sitting in front of the Kmart.
Right there.
That picture right there. See police all surrounding us.
Wow.
While we were near there, 2 women showed up and said, "This is my pastor." They were talking about Reverend Wright.
Right.
So now the woman who is congressman who taught here,
Alma
Alma Adams, got down on her knees. So there we were. Then Carolyn Coleman, who
Yeah.
was a member of
Special-
Reverend Wright's
she was
church,
She
assistant
was a
to the
special
governor,
assistant to the governor.
got down on her knees. And all of a sudden, when we went to jail, they locked us up, and we were singing, we were happy. You know, Reverend Wright was one who said, we were thinking about not getting out. You know, he said, "Well, what's going to happen on Sunday when my people come to church and and folks tell them I'm in jail?" And we said, "Well, that's good. They have to ask why you're in jail, then you get the chance to tell them. But if they don't ask, you just need to stay here another week." We had fun with it. But what that did was it drew the whole community in.
It did.
And students joined it. They started going to jail, and so almost every week something would be happening. And the workers were the backbone of this. Without them, none of this could have happened. Without what Deborah and Robyn were sharing, what they did in there, the courage they had to stand up against a $36 billion company. I can't even imagine how much money that is. They've got that much to throw at you. But in the process, we found out that they were paying the workers in Greensboro,
Less than half of what they're paying the workers in
less than half
Georgia.
of-
They were organized.
And
also in
this was
Georgia.
the only
No, they weren't.
facility.
They
It
weren't
was the only
organized.
facility that was majority
Right.
black, being paid almost half of what everybody else was being paid. Well, this is what we were able to find out, because the Chamber of Commerce guy said, "Well, we don't know if we want to be involved in this." We said, "Ain't a question whether you want to be involved. You are involved. You're in this city.
You allowed
You're
this
selling
to
stuff to
happen.
us. We buying your stuff, and we might have to walk away from your businesses." So in some sense, that began to take root. And the question that people normally put out there is, well, is this a black struggle? Is this a race struggle? Or is this a class struggle? And that is a loaded question. Because if you say it's a race struggle, then most of the white people feel excluded. If you say it's a class struggle, most of the black people feel excluded. So sometimes it's best not to even answer questions like that. We said, if you can tell me whether slavery was a class question or a race question, we'll answer your question. So don't ask us that no more. 63% of the people out here are black, and they're being mistreated worse than any other of your 12 plants in the nation. So we had work, and the Chamber of Commerce helped us get this information. And they didn't know what they were doing. We were, but what I feel is that when the contract was settled, we had a meeting in the Cultural Arts Center downtown.
Town hall.
Town hall meeting. You couldn't get all the people in the room. And so Channel 2, which never done me any favors, simulcast the thing and had a big jumbo screen out in the lobbyway. And so around the table was a welfare mother, part of our city. Around the table was the Chamber of Commerce, part of our city. Around the table was the union president, Sullivan Hamlin. Linda Jones was at the table. I was at the table. So, and what this did was we used a contentious struggle that was set up that could pit one race against another. But we worked this in such a way that instead of it being a stick of dynamite dropped in the city, blowing everything apart, it was the first best contract ever signed in the state of North Carolina. And therefore, it became, this is a document by Rockefeller. It chose 5 cases in the nation to highlight, and Kmart in Greensboro was one of them. The AFL-CIO put out a manual, I don't know if y'all ever saw it, about what happened in Greensboro. And Herb Nelson was running around saying that we got the key to it. And I want to just end by saying this. Until we as a community learn to act like a community, we can be played against each other. But whenever we walk toward each other, and as the old spiritual used to say, walk together, children, and don't you get weary, we can win. And so I think y'all model something that is not just helpful for you, not just helpful for the workers, but that was the finest day that we've had in Greensboro from the perspective of poor people. Poor people coming together, students coming together. This last little bit, a whole bunch of students from Guilford College came together, white students, sitting in the bus, all on their way to jail. The teacher was in the bus. He was on his way to jail. I don't know what their grades were, but everybody got an A. But that was the spirit that thing created. Of course, you know, once it was over, we gradually sink back into the ways we were doing things. But I'm glad that I don't know what show this is, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. But this story needs to be told over and over again so the city can see how the 600 workers defeat a $36 billion company in a city called Greensboro. When you look at that, there are lessons in that can serve us in so many, many ways. So that's why I'm so proud of Robyn and Deborah. Deborah gave a powerful speech. Had a rally at Dudley High School. By the way, I was negotiating with the superintendent. Who was it? It wasn't Weiss? And he said that the company headquarters in Michigan called him and told him he ought not to let us use the school.
Dudley High School, yeah. I remember you saying that.
I said, somebody in Michigan called you to tell you that the citizens of Greensboro can't use the school we pay for? Man, you better watch yourself. Your job might be out the window. He called and said, you can have the school. And Deborah, I wish I had the video of her standing in there with thousands of people. What were you saying, Deborah? Enough is enough.
Is enough.
And I think the way that group came was singing.
The Whiteville Choir.
The Whiteville Choir
It was
had
a
the
union
whole place
choir.
fired up. And it's one of the few cases where instead of the community exploding and being pushed further from itself, it's one of the struggles with labor and black people at the center that drew this city together. We couldn't hold it together. We didn't hold it together. I shouldn't say we couldn't. We could have done better. But that is, to me, the legacy and the meaning of the Kmart struggle. When people on the bottom move, I'll put it this way, if the basement of a building stood up, the whole building has to shake. And and that's what it means for poor people to get together and unite.
My parents always instilled in us about, you know, sometimes you might have to take a stand by yourself if you feel what you're doing is right. And that always stuck with me. And I watched, when I was 5 years old, I watched my dad go to jail marching with civil rights. And it was just very powerful, you know. And at Kmart, it was a lot of blacks and whites were very nervous about unions because we didn't really know a whole lot about unions. You know, they show you the bad things on TV. And that was the biggest thing. Once you could help them to understand, we're the union. If we don't want to do any rugged things, then we're not going to do those things. We are going to be our union. We are our union, you know. And once you got them to understanding that, and then for whites, they started seeing they were being mistreated just like we were. And so that's what when they got on board, you know. And one in particular, Dave Bloom, he was a powerful little white man. He really was. I'm telling you, Dave, he could stand his ground. He really did. He learned what he could and could not do, and he did it. He did. And one other thing too, that first Sunday when the ministers first went to jail, I was standing up on the hill. They had the community was standing up on the hill watching. And when the police came and they put metal handcuffs on ministers, plus a special assistant to the governor, plus a state representative, that cut through me so bad that there was no way I could turn around after that. I stood up on that hill and I cried, you know.
A lot of people did.
My mother and I, we cried because, you know, those were our people down there, you know. And that's when it really became really real. And there was no way I was going to turn back after that. And so then it got to be a thing every Sunday after church. We were going to the Kmart. Everybody was, and the ministers were going to jail. But that first one, it was just breathtaking. It just cut me, really did. And that's why I think that this story is so important. And I think that, you know, we still have a big community that's still hurting, you know, from other situations. And that clergy have not only a responsibility to just their congregations, but they have a responsibility to the whole community, you know. And these ministers proved it. They really did. And they made you proud, very proud of our community. And it went all across the country, you know, what these ministers did and even what the workers did. But that was powerful.
And what the workers did, supported by the ministers. Don't flip it. Ministers is big-headed, you know that.
You know, one thing we should say about Dave, one day I asked Dave Bloom, who was very involved in the union struggle. A lot of the white employees, some of them didn't want to get involved in it because they felt it was a race thing, although we tried to tell them it's not a race thing. We're all being abused in here. You know, if I get a pay raise, you get a pay raise. You know, so I said to Dave once, I said, Dave, why are you so involved in this whole struggle? And he said, before I came to Kmart, Robyn, I worked at a plant. I've been at this plant for 27 years. And he said one day they walked into the plant and they said to us, everybody's fired. And they told everybody to leave and they closed the door. And he said it took us a little while to get our last paycheck from this place. And he said, we had tried to fight for a union in this plant and it was voted down. And he said, the day that I walked out of that plant, I said to myself, if we had a union in this plant, they wouldn't have been able to do that to us. And he said to himself, the next job I go on, if they ever trying to organize a union, I was going to support that union because I worked on a job for 27 years and they did this to me. So that's why he said he was so involved in the union struggle, because he said he didn't want that to happen to him again. And his wife also worked there at Kmart, and she was very involved. She was a very vocal person as part of the union.
Dave was kind of short.
Yeah, a little short, white-headed guy. And he was really, you know, you talk about you have a backbone. Dave was one of those people that was the backbone of the struggle. Because he was one of those people that kind of brought people in and kept people going. And I can remember once when we went to Merrill Lynch, we were protesting, and we went up to Merrill Lynch, which was a supporter of the GGO.
Yeah.
And we went there to get them to stop supporting Kmart in their golf tournament. And we walked into the offices at Merrill Lynch, and we had about 100 people go into that office, and they had called the police and called security up there. And the security guard tried to close us up into this office that we had gone into. And Dave Bloom was sort of standing in the middle of the crowd, and when he saw the security guard trying to close this door, Dave shouted, "Don't let him close that door!" He ran back to the door, and two other members ran back to the door, and they pushed the door open. And Dave told the man, "No, we're not going to be closed up in here." And so then the press showed up, and the Merrill Lynch people had to listen to us. Because after the press showed up, they brought the guy down from upstairs. He didn't know what was going on. And we was passing out leaflets all through the building to the Merrill Lynch employees and stuff. So all the employees had stopped working. They were all standing outside this room. And so Dave said, "Let everybody hear this. Let everybody hear this." That's why he didn't want the door closed. So then the guy came down from upstairs, and he met with us. And he said, "All I can promise y'all that we'll do, we'll talk to Kmart and try to see what we can get settled here."
And the idea that businesses don't have a role in labor dispute is wrong.
That's right.
They do have a role in it. And could y'all talk about how some of the workers were not for the union? I know somebody threw some tacks or something, put some nails under the cars. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we had to negotiate between the non-unions and the union. Reverend Wright, Reverend Brown, myself, because that's what they did. They tried
And they
to
wanted,
divide.
but they wanted people to think that the union did it.
The union
but it was
was doing this.
non-union people that were trying to give us a bad name, you know. But we had no hand in any kind of violence. Even when we went on strike for a week, and it was very peaceful. The non-union, or the people that crossed the line, the picket lines, they would even get down on the floors in their cars, you know, so people wouldn't see
who they were.
Who they were, yeah. But you already knew their cars and everything. But they still kept going to work. It was.
Well, they had to bring in a lot of temps during that time too, which was good, because I know I was very proud of the people that did walk out, the number of people that did walk out on all three shifts, because as we estimated, counted the people that did come out and that didn't go to work that was on the picket line, we had like 95% of the workers in the plant, outside the plant. So it was only a handful of workers that were still in there. They had brought in a lot of temps from the temp services to try to keep it going. But it was kind of difficult because a lot of the stuff had to be done on equipment, and the temps couldn't drive the equipment because they were
had to
not
be
licensed, and they couldn't drive the equipment, so it was hard. So one of the temps who came out one morning had told us that they had the managers and the supervisors and the group leaders were in there driving equipment and actually doing the work, because a lot of the temps couldn't drive equipment because they were not licensed. So really the workers they had in there, they didn't have enough workers to really do the work. So it would have been to their advantage to negotiate with the workers then, because you were a week behind on your work. And it was I think that walkout was really good to show the company we can shut you down at any time we want to. And I think that was probably the thing that sort of swayed them over. They had two other distribution centers, one in Colorado and one in New York, that were both unionized. And Act Two was trying to get this, which they later became Unite. They was trying to get the Greensboro distribution center. And from my understanding, the Teamsters were in Georgia trying to get Georgia unionized. They were having a hard time because a lot of the workers in Georgia had been there for a lot of years because the distribution center there had been there for a very long time. And a lot of these workers, as we went to Georgia after we got our union in, I went to Georgia with some other workers to talk to the Georgia workers to try to get Unite also into that distribution center. Because we were trying to tell the distribution centers we don't need separate unions. If we all can come under one union, that's going to make us stronger. If we can all come under one union. So we talked to some of the workers there, and as we rode around in Union City, Georgia, Noonan, Georgia, where this distribution center was, and talked to some of the workers there, there was a total difference between the people that worked there. Some of these people had been there like 20 years, and they were making like $30, $35 an hour. And you go, some people's houses, they had 2 cars, boats sitting in the yard. Then you go somebody else's house, and these people looked like they were living in shantytown. And these were people that they had hired within the last 2 or 3 years, and because during the time that we were having our union struggle, the management there said they knew that the union was going to try to come to Noonan next. So they cut the pay. When they hired people in, they had cut that pay down to minimum wage. And the new people that came in was actually getting paid nothing. And I said, can you imagine that? You're being paid like $7.35 an hour, and you working next to somebody doing the same job they doing that's making $25 an hour. You know, and that's one of the reasons that the union went to Noonan, to try to tell these new people that were in there, the disparity in pay, that can be cut out. That can be cut out. And that in itself was an uphill battle in Noonan. A lot of the people were afraid they were going to lose their jobs, especially the workers that had been there a long time, were making the higher salary. They said, nah, it's not worth me losing my job over. And it wasn't in.
So they didn't get the union in?
They didn't get the union in. They tried twice to go in there and failed both times. The New York distribution center was unionized. Colorado distribution center was unionized. When we went to, after a while, Texas became unionized. They had a distribution center, I believe it's in Houston, Texas. They had brought some people from Houston, had come to Greensboro after a while, and they had developed some new kind of system that was supposed to make the work faster and easier, and they had brought some people from Houston here to train the people in Greensboro how to do this process, how to do that process. And one of the guys from Houston told me, he said, you know, we're talking union in Texas, and which I didn't know they were doing that. They were talking to a union in Texas, and I said, well, how's it going? He said, well, it's slow, but I'm going to be honest with you, I think a lot of the people are for it. And we had a little bump up with an employee, and where we had filed a grievance for an employee on third shift. And an employee had won the grievance, and the employee came back to work. And one of the managers had said, nobody notified me that you were coming back to work. And I was the shop steward there. And I said to the manager, it doesn't say in the contract that you have to be notified. All you run here is repack. You don't run the distribution center. The only person we have to notify is Dale Ross. And he was right there in court when this person won their right to come back to work. So you can't send this person home. And the guy from Texas said to me after we went on break, he said, how does that make you feel when you talk back to a manager like that? And I said, well, it's no feeling to it. You know, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And we've got a contract in this distribution center. And so when we came back from break, I had gone out to my car and I had got a contract book. I brought it back in with me to repack. I walked in the office and put it on the repack desk in front of the manager. I said, you need to read that. And just walked out. And but this is the thing you have. And after after that, I had given this guy my telephone number. And I said, why don't you call me sometime? And if you want to talk, if y'all need some kind of guidance or something, you know, we may even send people to Texas to help y'all talk to your employees, to do whatever. Because we had gone to Noonan, Georgia. We had gone there like 2 or 3 times to Noonan. And I said, we'd be happy to come to Texas. So he called me and he said, I just called you to tell you that we voted the union
In Texas.
in.
The woman that you defended, whatever happened to her?
They stayed there, and both of them joined the union.
Okay.
And one of the young ladies was one of the first people to sign a union card. And right up front, the first day that we got the union cards, they couldn't sign them. They couldn't sign the cards. We couldn't hand them out while people were working. We had to wait till people were on break or the people left work, because we couldn't be on the clock promoting the union. So the first day that we brought the union cards in there, and we were standing outside passing out leaflets, and I had union cards, and I said, anyone that wants to sign a card, you can sign a card now before you get on the clock. She was one of the first people to take the card out of my hand and sign it. So, and they both were there for a good while. Rebecca was from Reedsville. I see Tracy Gardner now every now and then. She was the other girl that he was yelling at. She signed the union card. She said when she went home, her father said, if they're trying to get a union, you need to get in it. And so she came the next day and took a union card. And so they both was there. And why I defended them, I don't know, maybe it was because Tracy started to cry. And that did something to me. That he had bullied them so bad that she would start to cry. You know, and as I said to her, I said, don't ever cry in front of people like this. Don't ever cry. Don't ever let anybody do that to you. I said, I would rather have you curse him out and walk out of here than to stand there and cry. You know, I said, don't ever let people bully you that way, no matter what job you go on. You don't have to be bullied like that. And I think that's what did it for me, was seeing her stand there and cry.
Touch your humanity.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It just brought something out in me.
You know, there's Kmart was saying that the union was the reason that they went out of business, or they lost so much money. But that wasn't it. Kmart was very frivolous with the way they threw money around at their managers. They would take these trips all around the world for conferences, but they were able to take their families along with them, and they paid for this, you know. So they just threw money around. They really did. It wasn't us that caused Kmart to fail. It was their own spending habits.
And I think it was because we had won the union battle against them. I think after we won the union battle, I think the whole company sort of keyed that distribution center to be closed, because we were like the example, the test case that won a union battle against this big company. And they didn't want other distribution centers to follow suit. And especially after Texas voted in the union, I think they kind of saw it as a snowball effect. They saw it coming as a snowball effect. Because right at the time that we got the union in, Kmart had just opened up like 2 or 3 brand new distribution centers after Greensboro opened up. So they were planning to be big time with this.
Their model, I think they got outmaneuvered by Walmart.
That was it too.
Well, Kmart started out pricing
They were the 5 and dime.
Right. They were number one in the retail. And but then when they started bringing in Martha Stewart, big names, then they had to go up on their prices. So it took them out of the
took them out of that 5 and dime rule.
It did.
That was when they first came into
business. And that's when Sam Walton was able to just take his and go
move it
up
up.
to the top.
Kmart was the biggest 5 and dime in Greensboro. and they ruled because they had low prices. Christmas time, you know, if you wasn't in Sears, you were at Kmart. You know, because those two stores were the stores where people shop. Because working people couldn't afford too much more, especially if you had 3 and 4 children. You know, and you want to buy a bicycle or whatever for your kids for Christmas, you either went to Sears or Kmart. And then Kmart felt that they could take that step to the next level. So they started bringing in designer stuff, which meant the prices had to go up. And when the prices went up, Walmart was right there
And they
to
moved
slip
right
in
on
the
in.
door
Yeah.
and let them go up. We'll take that 5 and dime roll. And that's
Yeah.
what killed Kmart. They let Walmart slip in on them. If I can get it cheaper at Walmart, if I can get it a quarter cheaper at Walmart, I'm going to Walmart. And that's what people did. And that's what killed them, really.
What I think would be a problem is the people should be able to be paid decent wages and companies stay in business.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for coming out and speaking about this very important part of history in Greensboro. My last question would be, for those who are interested in getting involved in Greensboro, what are some ways in which they can and resources they can utilize?
Well, there's a book called Louder Than Words, and it's put out by the Rockefeller Foundation. This book gives you a pretty good history of what happened here in Greensboro. And you can also contact me at debplace, DEBPLACE, the number 5, at gmail.com.
Wow. Okay. I think social justice is something that most of our churches here in Greensboro are involved in. And you can always get involved through your church because a lot of churches are involved in the whole social justice movement here, so that would be a good place for you to start. You can contact me on my email at robynestesandrev9119@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I was telling Deborah, people have called me, and I have said to these people, where did you get my number? So people have no problem getting your number or your name anywhere. During the time that we were doing the Kmart struggle, I worked on a lot of political campaigns here in Greensboro, and a lot of people know me from that, from working on those political campaigns. And so people call me a lot and ask me about stuff. Is it right for people to do this or do that? And I kind of try to hook them up with somewhere to go and somebody to get in touch with that'll help them. So I'll be happy if they want to email me, or call me.
Every Wednesday at 12 noon at the Beloved Community Center, 417 Arlington Street, we have a community table. It's really a circle of people who are invited to come and to share anything that has to do with improving the community on their heart. We have at Beloved a number of resources, this booklet being one, so I would encourage that. I think I want to just express a lot of gratitude to you and to Bennett College, and especially to Deborah and Robyn, because I think some of our best stories are not told. That we get stories of things that didn't work. Well, that's not the whole story. There's some things that work and we don't replicate them. We don't share those stories sufficiently. This is an example. People all over the nation, we introduced the concept of community unionism, which is the community actually can become a union. It doesn't have to go through NLRB. It has to have an ethics and morality that makes your interests claim my attention. We have to have a way to work with that. That's what we try to do at the Beloved Community Center. There's one last thing that I do want to raise up. I think one of the most hopeful things going on in the nation now is the Poor People's Campaign. under the leadership of Reverend Dr. William Barber and Dr. Liz Theo Harris. I don't know when this is coming out, but they'll be in Greensboro on this Sunday, 4 o'clock at A&T on Gall Street. And a lot of that's going to be on how the lines were drawn, the gerrymandering lines. They're going to be worshiping at New Light. But the campaign is going to go on for years. And you can get in touch with the campaign through the Beloved Community Center. Let me give you the best contact at Beloved. It's Joyce J, J-O-Y-C-E, at belovedcommunitycenter.org. There is another email there. We got 4 or 5. I just can't think of it now.
That's
But
all right.
that one will get you to any place you need to get to.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you
Yes,
all.
Thank
thank
you.
you. We appreciate it.